Good morning. I am Erica McKenna, and I am a member of the CCCBA Board of Directors and will be president for 2022. On behalf of the Contra Costa County Bar Association, I would like to welcome you to Day 3 of the 27th Annual MCLE Spectacular. We hope you are feeling updated, up-leveled, and uplifted. We have a full slate for you today, including the Honorable Elizabeth D. Laporte as our keynote speaker. I can't wait to hear what she has to say. This session, Why Are You So Emotional? How to Respond to Gender Bias and High Conflict Situations, is presented by the CCCBA Women's Section. Our sponsor for this session is Judicate West. I would like to introduce Mark Kaufman, the Executive Vice President of Market Development for Judicate West, who would like to say a few words.
Thank you, Erica, and hi, everybody. It's great to be here for the 27th Annual MCLE Spectacular. That's only 1 year younger than Judicate West is, and we are very proud to support it. MCLE has always been a big part of our marketing and educational processes at Judicate West, so we have a special affinity for this event. I think everyone will both enjoy and get a lot out of the topic. Panel is fantastic, and I want to give a very special shout out to our very own Rebecca Gray, who is one of the panel members. Just to run through some fun stats with you, to date we have conducted over 15,000 virtual sessions with hundreds more scheduled, and they continue to be the majority of the cases that we are setting statewide. We are noticing a slight trend in some of the markets we are located in, that there is more demand for in-person sessions than a few months ago, and the number continues to climb slowly. We feel as the global health crisis subsides over time, that organically consumers of dispute resolution want to get back together and attend in person. That said, Zoom, virtual mediation, virtual arbitration is here to stay, and we are always looking for ways to improve the virtual experience, whether it's the Grubhub credits we provide so we keep you all fed, or providing a virtual assistant or host for your case, and having what I think is the best IT department in the industry. All that said, we can't wait till in-person sessions are more the norm than the exception. In closing, I hope everyone is having a great time learning and earning MCLE credits. Thank you for listening. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Mark, for your sponsorship and Judicate West's continued support of the CCCBA and this outstanding event. Our event and program sponsors are a very important part of our CCCBA community. They make it possible for us to provide events like this. Please support us by supporting them. Please take some time during this event to visit the virtual sponsor booths on the SPEC site. A couple quick reminders. For assistance with any technical difficulties, head to the FAQ tab on the event's main page. Don't forget, while this program is pre-recorded, the speakers are available live in the chat to answer your questions during the presentation. They will also be available in the live Q&A immediately following the presentation. At this time, I would like to pass the program over to Rachel Leonard, former president and current board member of the CCCBA's Women's Section, who will introduce today's speakers.
Thanks so much, Erica. I'm very excited to be here representing the Women's Section, introducing our 4 excellent speakers for this presentation. Our first speaker is Vahishta Falahati, who specializes in real estate law, representing individuals and business entities, emphasizing both in transaction and litigation. Vahishta has broad experience advising individuals and business entities on formal litigation matters, as well as effectively and efficiently negotiating settlements and dismissals. She has spent her career in real estate law and is also a real estate broker. Our next speaker is Deb Graceffa, who co-founded her firm in 2005. Deb also specializes in real estate as well as business litigation. She advises on transactional matters, including real estate transaction and business entity formation. Deb is also a mediator who resolves disputes between parties in both pre-litigation and litigation stages. Deb is also a real estate broker. Our next speaker is Rebecca Gray, who has a long career as a civil litigator and then began mediating cases in 2012 when she found what she refers to as her second calling. She's helped settle many cases in a variety of legal areas, including insurance coverage, bad faith, subrogation, real estate, and a variety of other special areas. Rebecca has done hundreds of hours of formal training in dispute resolution and volunteers her time as a court-appointed judge pro tem in San Francisco, Alameda, and Marin counties. Finally, we have Dory Willer, founder of Beacon Quest Coaching in 1998. Dory specializes in business success, career, and life renewal coaching. She is a certified individual and organizational coach. Her professional career spans 25 years of global corporate Fortune 100, nonprofit, and government experience in senior executive, board of directors, and professional leadership positions. Dory coaches hundreds of business professionals and management teams to new levels of business success, teens to launch their first chapter of adulthood, and is a prominent international speaker. I will now turn the program over to Vahishta. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rachel. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. As introduced, my name is Vahishta Falahati, and I will be the moderator on this panel. Let me start off by giving you an idea and purpose behind this talk. The idea for this talk came to me after facing a conversation with opposing counsel, who was a royal jerk and felt that it was okay to not only yell at me, but also demean my intelligence. I'm sure many of you have faced those types of individuals or situations. During the conversation, few thoughts ran through my head, such as, what medication has this attorney skipped this morning, and how can I help him find it? Why am I doing this for a living? And if I yell back, is he going to say why am I being emotional? Which I would be furious about because he definitely wouldn't say that to a male attorney. And what can I do to respond to him other than yell back? After my conversation with opposing counsel, I thought about a few things, such as I'm so tired of opposing counsel using hostile tactics to communicate. Why are they under the impression that if they yell or demean the other side, that they are doing a great job for their client or are the better attorney? Unfortunately, you see a lot of that in litigation. I can't answer the why, although I do have some theories. But what I and my colleagues on this panel hope to provide you are some tools that will help you to respond to individuals with high conflict personalities. Individuals who use tactics such as yelling, blaming, and humiliating when communicating. Hopefully, these tools can help diffuse these types of situations so that you are not internalizing these encounters or taking the baggage home to your family, especially your children. So how are we going to proceed? I will read scenarios which are incidents that have been experienced by my colleagues and I, and each of us will give you ideas on how to respond. And our expert here, who is Dory, will tell you if this is a good way to respond or if there is a better or alternative way to respond. With that said, I'm going to read scenario 1. You're in mediation representing a party. Your client and his tenant in common partner are fighting over some unpermitted work performed in the 2-unit building they own together. They contract to hire an engineer to modify drawings that another engineer had already submitted to the city to permit all the work. The engineer that your client hired then picks sides between the two parties. And although this engineer was in contract solely by your client for much of the work, he submits 3 fraudulent drawings to the city that favors the other owner. Your client spends $100,000 in consultant fees and arbitration fees to kick off the engineer from the project. You're now in mediation with the other owner, who is your client's tenant in common partner. The mediator spends a lot of time in the other room to start and then comes to your room. The mediator makes none of the customary admonitions for mediation, no discussion of confidentiality or how the process works. The mediator doesn't even introduce himself to your client or ask your client a single question. Instead, soon as he logs on, the mediator says to your client, "Wow, your tenant in common partner really hates you. And I hear that you have done illegal construction." Your client, who is very nice, is stunned. So the question is, how do you respond to the mediator? And Deb, I'm going to turn to you in giving us methods of ways of responding to this mediator.
Helps if I unmute myself. So that was my case. That was a mediation where I was representing a party and not the mediator. I will say that, you know, the topic of this talk is gender bias or things that happen related to that. And my gender is not very easily read, so I think people are a little confused by me sometimes, and it actually sort of works to my benefit. I will say that, you know, a lot of times, you know, I used to get very upset when people treated me in some of the ways that Vahishta was describing. And I sort of changed my tack a couple of years ago. I took a course that I thought was very helpful. You know, sort of telling the other side that they shouldn't behave that way was not very helpful. I just had to change sort of how I was responding, because if I spent my time telling other people how to police their behavior, I'm wasting my own breath. So I started changing how I was responding to them. One of the things that I use is a lot of sort of self-deprecating humor to start. A lot of times when someone says to me, "I'm going to beat you," I say, "You probably will." And I tell them all the subjects that I did poorly in law school and all the cases I've lost and how they're probably going to kick my behind. And then they're confused. In this particular instance, I was pretty stunned at what the mediator did. And instead of responding right away, I counted to almost 50. I sort of turned away from the camera and said nothing. And I saw my client was squirming pretty badly, but so was the mediator. And he finally said, "Counsel." And I said, "Well, I'm thinking about what chapter of How to Win Friends and Influence People you just pulled that from. I'm not sure where to go with that. Sounds like we're in trouble, aren't we?" And then I said nothing. And that silence was actually very helpful. And that's another tool that I use often, is sort of planning ahead and timing out. Timeout was a very big thing for me. In litigation, we get emails. And, you know, my first inclination was, while I was hot, I was going to write the one back, right? I wanted to get that feeling off of me and back onto them. Someone vomits on you, you want to push it back to them. I developed a rule when I started sort of working with this, is that I would not allow myself to respond to an inflammatory email for 48 hours, no matter what it said, no matter how many threats there were about "you better get back to me by X, Y, and Z." I would always wait 48 hours. I've cut that down to 24, and now I can respond to people, but I really trained myself not to respond. And that's sort of what I did in this mediation. Was to time myself out. And what it did is it sort of made the other side uncomfortable, made the mediator pretty uncomfortable, and let him sit with his own comment. The other thing that was very helpful, and is often helpful, is I sort of have some stock phrases that I use when these things happen, so I don't have to think up something on the spot. People who have used me as a mediator sort of smile when I use them, because if they've used me a couple of times, they know they're coming. And I always have to tell them, the counsel, and say, you can pretend you didn't hear this before, but I use some of the same things, because when we're sort of in this part of your brain where you're hot and you're upset, it's very hard to come up with something helpful on the spot. So I always use a couple of things that a lot of times are self-deprecating, and it actually sort of diffuses what's coming out of the other person's mouth. You know, the mediator in this instance said, "Well, I mean, you know, she hates your client." And I said, "Okay, I'm sure she probably hates me too. Where are we? What does that mean? What are you even? I'm not even sure what you're talking about. Like, what And then what? What's your perception? Where are we here? And then I just stopped talking. And I looked at my client like, don't say a word. It then put the onus back on the person who had said the bad thing without me having to tell them directly. Well, that was a pretty shitty thing to say. And I think the mediator got the message. And at that point forward, instead of sort of saying these inflammatory things, he would say things, and I would say, can you say that in a different way? I don't understand you. And a lot of times sort of calmly diffusing a situation, timing out, silence, a well-timed silence can work wonders, because the person who has sort of lobbed this bomb into the air actually has to catch it again and do something with it. That case didn't settle, not because we were upset with the mediator or the other side was upset with us, but I think that on some level, the mediator didn't know what to do with the facts that were there, and so sort of resorted to this other sort of bullying tactic that my client just sort of calmed down from the inception. I saw the look on his face to start. I remained calm. He stayed calm, and in the Zoom sessions we talked, and I said, "Hey, I'm not sure the mediator knows where to go with this. We don't need to respond in kind. Just hang out. Let him do his job. Let him do the work." So that really, I think that really helped. And I think a lot of times we are taught to fight, or we are taught to sort of explain to other people why they aren't playing the game correctly or doing the thing we want them to do. But sometimes you have to change your own behavior and they will follow, right? I mean, I train dogs, and, you know, you can yell at a dog, but they don't speak English or any other language. It's your body language and how you behave that teaches them what to do. And sadly, I'll save the joke I'm going to make, but sadly, you sort of have to, sometimes you have to train other people by your own body language and the sort of tone you're setting in the room to do what you want without actually saying anything. I mean, I can look at my dogs and just give them a look and they know, right? And sometimes we have to get to that level, because ultimately we all have animal brains. And you know, sometimes you can be speaking to someone and it's going right over their head. So, you know, just to sort of recap, humor, not everyone likes that. Not everyone can pull it off, but that's very helpful. Even when it's self-deprecating, it sort of diffuses things. I don't know what a lawyer says to you when you say, "You're probably going to beat me." What are they going to say? "Yeah, that's right." They don't, they're sort of stunned into silence. Timeouts and sort of silence, especially when someone's done something that you don't want them to do again. And then plan ahead. Have a couple of stock phrases that you will use when you start to feel hot under the collar, that you can say, that you don't have to think about in the moment. I mean, I could tell you there's 3 things I always say, and I'm not going to repeat them here, but there's sort of 3 go-to things I say that sort of stops everyone dead in their tracks. And then I sort of throw it back in their court without them even really realizing it.
That's great, Deb. How about you, Rebecca? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I loved everything Deb said. And as a mediator, I'm appalled by this scenario. It's really a lesson in what not to do. And that's often what we're learning, right? When we see people do really well, we can steal their ideas. And when we see people make mistakes, we can also learn there what not to do. And in that situation, what's really interesting is I have no notes on Deb's thing. I think that pause is very Jedi mind trick and super powerful. One thing you can do also is, in that situation, you can do the mediator's job, right? The mediator should be introducing themselves to your client. The mediator should be establishing a rapport. And so you might say, as the lawyer, you know, "Oh, Rebecca, welcome to the Zoom room. This is my client, Joanne. You know, Joanne still lives in the rental unit and blah, 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 blah," right? "Joanne, would you like to share with Rebecca? Blah, 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 blah." It's embarrassing as a mediator that somebody would have to do that, but that's one way to approach it. Talking about the emotional piece, right? There's a lot as a mediator, I love emotions, because emotions it's data, right? They're clues to the puzzle, and I'm putting a puzzle together. So I like to see emotions and note them and try to hold them, right? So first I try to observe them and be curious about them. And then I also want to, rather than as a lawyer, right, I spent 20 years like batting it back, right? Hitting it back, ping pong. As a mediator, I hold it more like a bowl, right? And I want to observe it. I want to loop. I want the litigant to feel heard. And that I want the litigant's emotions to be honored and recognized, because that is a huge cathartic moment for that person. And it's a way for that person to understand you're getting it as a mediator. And then as we're talking about some of these kind of abusive bullying personality traits that we deal with sometimes in opposing counsel, create boundaries, right? And enforce them, right? So I think of myself as like that really loving, cool high school counselor that has to enforce the rule with the troubled teenager, and just kind of take that power as like, I know you're having a hard day. I know you're feeling upset. I know you're frustrated. Or like in this scenario, what I see with this mediator is I read that this mediator is insecure, right? And this mediator is like, I don't know what to do with the emotions in the other room. And so they're coming in and going, blah, rather than holding it like a bowl and observing what they're saying and then collecting from both sides. So really, I'm going to use a lot of Deb's tricks myself. I love the counting. I love the timeout. I love the silence. Think Jedi.
Great. Thank you, Rebecca. How about our resident expert, Dory? What are your thoughts?
Well, I don't think Deb or Rebecca said anything that I wouldn't coach. I think it was really perfect, especially the way Deb came at it. It fits her personality. It fits who she is. And she stayed very authentic to whom she is. But when we're talking about other people, maybe who aren't with that level of humor or also security, the knowing who you are and what you're doing, maybe the person is intimidated by the mediator. I love the approach, Rebecca. That's one of the first things I would do too, which is, well, hello, let me introduce you to my client. And would you mind introducing yourself? So you're correcting their behavior. You also recognize that they're coming in, dumping and venting on what just happened to them. As you said, they don't know where to go with this. But there are a couple of things. So after I've gone through that, or if I wanted to start right in, I might say, that's an interesting opinion, or that's an interesting perspective. Say more about that. So now I'm going to cause them to ramble. And I'm right there with, well, you're in Zoom, but if you were in person, you're right there with your client and you've already created a hand signal or something. That hand signal might be like this under the table, which is stay calm, stay cool, because you've already counseled with them. And allow them to take their breaths as their blood pressure is rising. And you're in control. As soon as you say, well, say more about that. Now that next person is just spewing forth and they're going to get caught in what it is they're doing. You could say it so many more times. Really fascinating, interesting opinion, interesting perspective, until they've exhausted themselves. And then if they start repeating themselves, you would stop and say, excuse me, a hand gesture, something like this, time out, to say, you've already said that. Is there something more? Until they exhaust. But no, I like both approaches. Love it.
Just to add to what Rebecca and Deb and Dory have said, one of the tactics I've used in the past where I've had difficult mediators is, in essence, to call them out on their behavior, pull them out of, well, back in the day when it was live, in-person mediation, I'd call out the mediator outside of my client's presence and say, that is not acceptable behavior. You're jeopardizing the mediation. And so sometimes mediators or people don't realize what they're saying or doing. And so when you call them out on their behavior, it kind of puts things in perspective. And, they're going, oh, wow, I can't believe someone perceived it that way. Maybe it was my tone. Maybe it was the words that I've used. I didn't intend it that way. But when you call out someone on their behavior, sometimes it works and sometimes it backfires. You never know. You got to feel the situation before you call out someone on their bad behavior. Those were all very, very good commentary. So I'm going to move on to the second scenario so that we make sure we get through all three scenarios. The second scenario is you are the mediator in a civil action for money owed for professional services with a very aggressive counterclaim against plaintiff claiming various flavors of fraud. The trouble started when one of the attorneys couldn't figure out Zoom's video setting and lashes out at you as his technical incompetence become increasingly embarrassing. After struggling for nearly an hour with the attorney on the phone trying to get his video to work, you are finally able to get him on video, at which point he tells you his clients were not available due to a work emergency. Meanwhile, the parties and the lawyers on the other side are all gathered in their respective offices on Zoom. When his clients text him to say they are now available, which was about an hour after the mediator's start time, the attorney orders you to call his clients and tech support them into Zoom. You say to the attorney that this wasn't the way it worked and his client could negotiate the link themselves. The lawyer then loses his temper and screams at you the following: "You're wasting time, and why don't you just shut up and call my clients at home to walk them through the process?" The attorney then gets more and more personal with you by screaming the following: "Who the hell do you think you are? Do you think you are powerful like a judge? Are you just soft and only deal with people who are nice to you?" After you give him several chances to calm down and try again and to refocus on the real issues, you alert the other side that the attorney was having technical challenges. On about the third time you return to the Zoom room with the hostile attorney, his two clients are now on Zoom, but were sharing an iPhone, both masked, walking through a public place, and before you could say hello, they begin to yell at you, accusing you of not letting them into the Zoom room. How do you respond to the attorney and his clients? Rebecca, how do you respond to the attorney and his clients?
Well, this was my scenario. This is a version of something that happened to me. I'm thankful to be a mediator at this stage in my life when I have the calm, security, and confidence, and I know myself, to Dory's point, enough to know. So I definitely had that feeling of the blood pressure. But what I had the presence to not do was to personalize what he said. I didn't take in what he was saying. I knew that this was about him and not about me. And that really helped me try to stay in observatory mode as much as I could. There's a real tension here because I really wanted to help the party. And the party had a lawyer that was problematic, right? He was a bully, he was technically incompetent, and he was embarrassed by what happened, and he was lashing out and attacking me. So in that situation, as I said earlier, right, be curious about emotion, observe and try to hold emotion, but also create boundaries. So here's a situation where I was in the unfortunate position when I had to establish a boundary and then enforce it, right? So to Deb's point, right, she trains dogs, or those of us who are parents with kids, you know that if you have a boundary and you don't enforce it, you lose all credibility for the rest of your life. So I had to say to him, I've had several conversations. I've let you know that this was not acceptable and that I was going to end the Zoom if you kept this up. But then, and so that's what I'm going to do. But first, I need to let your clients know what happened. And so I tried to, in plain English, as simply and briefly as possible, explain what happened, explain the problems, explain the process of, I tried to get them into the Zoom. It didn't work. All the things that the attorney had done, trying to describe it in an objective tone. it was, there was no rationality in anyone else, in any other Zoom window, in my little Brady Bunch window. Everybody else was like, and I just had to say, okay, hold on a second. I'm not done. So then what happened was, okay, I appreciate what you're saying. I know it's frustrating, looping that emotion. I know you had trouble getting on the Zoom. I know it's hard. Mediation over Zoom is difficult in and of itself. I'm sure you're emotional. I'm sure this is frustrating for you. I'm going to end the Zoom now, right? Then I'm the school counselor with the difficult teenager. This is what's going to happen, and I had to, they were yelling at me when I ended the Zoom, which I've done that once in my whole career. So it was very frustrating. And I had to be aware and observe my own investment and wanting to get the parties talking and wanting to settle this case. So I had a lot of stake. And I had to dial that back. I had to let go, right? Accept the things I could not change. And in that situation, that's what I had to do. I don't think I would do much differently doing it over again, but it was definitely a huge professional challenge for me.
Thanks, Rebecca. Deb, how would you respond?
Well, you're much nicer than I am, Rebecca.
Not many people say that about me. So
I don't think anybody says I'm nice. There's a fine line between having to be really professional and then also taking a lot of crap, right? I don't think anybody in this profession should take crap from other people. I mean, like it's a profession where a lot of hard things go on, but there's a line, and clearly those people crossed it. When I talked earlier about plan ahead, when someone's yelling on me at Zoom, I often will pull this thing and I'll go and I'll say, oh, sorry, who are you talking to? Because I know it's not me. And then I know you're not yelling at me that way because A, I'm not married to you. B, you're not in my family. And no one yells at me except for those people. I'm not sure what, start again, right? And so I mean, there's you have to put up boundaries, and I'm glad that you did. It's a hard thing because as a mediator also, you don't want to be in this position where people have hired you to do something and then you have hung up on them. But some people need to be hung up on, and I think you handled it in a very professional way. So I mean, I support that, and I have also said to people, if I count to three, if I have to count you out to three, I'm going to leave at two. So we're already at one, right? And people, yellers, screamers, bullies actually don't like to be pushed back on. And sometimes if you do it in sort of a calm way and you actually do the thing you're going to say you're going to do, and they perceive that you are actually going to log out and you are actually going to walk away without yelling back at them, it can be really effective.
How about you, Dory? What are your thoughts on that?
Each situation, you got to be there in the middle. I think Rebecca did exactly what somebody would do and should do to try and pull back the bad behavior. I love Deb's sense of humor. I mean, there's other ideas when you were talking, looking back, saying, "You talking to me?" That type of thing. I've actually heard somebody say when somebody's yelling at them, I don't wear hearing aids. You can lower your voice now. Everything's good. There's also, if you really want to pull this together and recognizing that, yes, it's disrespectful. And yet what you really want to do is you want to focus right on the reason we're here is to accomplish something. And Rebecca, you were doing a wonderful job in your explanation of trying to get to that. There's another tactic that I use sometimes, and I call it buttercream. And buttercream is I pull something out that softens the person who is just so upset. They're so emotional. And I might pull something out, such as with that gentleman, I know this is really difficult. It's not easy to get through this. I understand. I can hear how frustrated it is. what I'd like to do for the next 10 seconds is let's just take a breath. And then I'm going to start over. And I actually count. And then I say, hi, my name is Rebecca Gray. I am the mediator of, so you're giving them an opportunity to start over again and be in a place of, let's move forward. Let's stay with the purpose. The purpose of this Zoom meeting, now that we're all on, I'm glad we're all on, that's that buttercream. We're putting that behind us. We're moving forward. And let's stay focused on the purpose of this meeting now that we're together. Now, with the people who thought you didn't include them on Zoom, or you had some problem, or they thought you manipulated it, is that true, Rebecca?
They said they were waiting, that I had barred them from the Zoom.
That you had barred them.
It was their own technical challenge, of course.
Yes. And sometimes I might even go push back a little bit and say, wow, that's a very interesting thought that I have that ability to do that for you. And then I might say, I do not. And then I move on. And the way I do it is just the way I'm expressing it here. I'd say, I do not I don't, I can't, I do not. And then I'd smile. Now, can we move on forward to blah, blah, blah? Because you have responded to their barrage of an insinuation that isn't true. And you've tucked it away and you've moved forward. But the way you said, I'm ending this Zoom call, if we all can't do the following things, which are the appropriate behaviors that you set forward, then this is done. Do you understand this person, this person, this person? You know, you're asking for a yes from them. Great. Let's go forward. So the whole point is, can you get them to push it behind and stay behind? The yelling, there's also tactics which are, let's use a lower voice. Let's use a slower voice. Or even the request, I have a request of you, Rebecca. And then it stops the person in their track. Well, what's your request? I'd like you to use your inside voice, please. We don't have a need to yell. I'm not wearing hearing aids. Okay?
Rebecca, I'm just curious, at what point did you decide to just say, this is it? I'm no longer dealing with this attorney. At what point? Because I know personally, me, after the first 10 minutes, I would say, screw this, click. So I'm just curious, as a mediator, at what point did you decide that, you know, I'm going to stop this now? I've had enough.
Well, it was funny because he was super difficult, and I had some buttercream moments to use that, where I figured out a way to kind of get through to him a couple of times where I could break his bully tantrum. And the problem was getting his clients on the Zoom. And I made a decision that when he couldn't do it and he was screaming at me that I wasn't text supporting them onto the Zoom, I went in and said, okay, I'll be right back. And I went to the other side and I said, I'm going to end the Zoom because his clients aren't on and he's having some challenges, some personal challenges. And they were like, yeah, totally, we know. And I came back in and I was getting ready to I'd sort of released the other room and I came back in and be like, bye. And his clients were on, walking through the hallway with masks, holding their cell phone, jiggling. And so I had to call an audible and be like, I'm still going to do this. I still got to end this, but I have to do some talking. I have to explain to them because in a way they were the ones I cared about more than the tantruming lawyer. I cared more about these parties who were in a very challenging, silly lawsuit. And I wanted to try to help explain where I was coming from because I could imagine how frustrated they were. So it was at that point that I was like, okay, oh God, I was going to call it. Now they're here. Now I got to explain it to them. And that's how I handled it.
Got it. Okay. That's great. So let me go through the third scenario. I think we're doing good on time, But let me get through this third scenario and get your perspectives on this scenario. So this is actually a scenario that happened to me. Opposing counsel who just substituted in leaves you a voicemail. You call him back the same day. He picks up the phone and you introduce yourself and inform him you represent the plaintiffs. After you introduce yourself, opposing counsel begins to state in a raised voice, i.e. yelling, as follows. I don't understand why the hell your clients are suing. You and your clients have done nothing but waste time and money in this case. And if I were the judge, I would be very mad at you and your clients. You and your clients should be sanctioned for this behavior. Did you know your client committed perjury in her prior deposition? If I were you, I would settle quickly because your client's credibility is shot. Opposing counsel rambles on for another minute and concludes with the following. Your clients are wasting a lot of money in this case. The judge is not going to be happy with you and your clients, so I suggest we go to mediation. So I'm going to explain how I addressed the situation. I took a lot of deep breaths before I responded. Because I was fuming. The attorney had just substituted in, had no clue about the case. The case had been going on for a couple of years. And my initial conversation, and literally after saying, hi, my name is Vahishta Falahati, I represent the plaintiffs, he started just going at it. And so what I ended up doing is, instead of yelling back, instead of using hostility and aggression, what I did was I took several deep breaths. And when you slow down your breathing, it kind of neutralizes your voice. So your voice doesn't show that anger that you are truly feeling or that emotion that you're feeling. Because the last thing I wanted this attorney to say to me is, why are you being so emotional? So a lot of deep breaths. Then the second step that I did was I distanced myself from the hostility, meaning I weeded through the yelling and tried to concentrate on what this attorney was trying to do or say. He wanted to go to mediation. That was the bottom line. He wanted to go to mediation. But instead of coming out and saying, hey, I think it behooves the parties to go to mediation, and here's my thoughts on it, the way he went about it was totally hostile. But being able to distance myself away from the yelling, away from the screaming, away from the hostility, I got to the point where I understood what he was trying to convey, which was in essence mediating. And then the third thing I did, and I've learned this over the years, is when someone is calling and is talking in a manner that is upsetting to you, do not interrupt them. Just let them rant. Let them rant. And when you think they're done, you say, excuse me, I just want to make sure you're done saying what you need to say. I don't want to interrupt you. And if you do it in a calm voice, it just stops them. And they step back and go, oh, yeah, I'm done. And then you explain to them, I think Rebecca mentioned earlier, you loop the conversation. So you weed out the yelling and you loop the conversation. So you say, so I just want to make sure I understand your point. Are you trying to say X, Y, and Z? And the attorney usually says, no, I'm not trying to say that, or yes, I'm trying to say that. And then you move on the conversation that way. And one of the tactics I actually used on this attorney is, since I knew he had just substituted in and he was clueless about the case, I, in essence, used the facts of the case. I knew my case I knew the facts of the case because I'd lived it for the last 2 years. So in essence, I was telling the attorney, did you know your client did X and Y and Z? Did you know this is the type of motions we had filed in this case? No, I had no idea. So in essence, I bombarded the attorney with facts that went on with the case, where it kind of made him look like an idiot, like calling me and yelling at me without knowing the facts of the case. And then at the end, I asked him, why do you believe my client committed perjury? I was actually curious. I said, why do you believe that? And his response was whatever it was. And I said, did you know I sat through that deposition? At no point did representing my client, believe that my client committed perjury. And what you are saying is actually incorrect. And it kind of took him off guard, but my tone never changed. Despite the fact that I was fuming inside, my tone was neutral. And it was calm, and it kind of calmed the attorney. And as I said earlier, I called the attorney out on his behavior at the end. And sometimes, as I said, it works, sometimes it doesn't. And I said, look, at the end of the day, your goal was to get the parties to mediate. I am definitely open to mediation, but the way you went about demanding mediation or asking mediation was just improper. You could have changed your tone a bit. You could have come off a different way. And surprisingly, the attorney actually apologized at the end. That was a first. But the attorney actually apologized at the end, and we had a good relationship. We ended up going to mediation and settling the case. So those are the few tactics that I have used in the past, and I've learned over the years these tools such as breathe. Do not respond right away. Make sure you are breathing. Take deep breaths. And Deb mentioned this, count to whatever number you need to count as you slow down your breathing. And try to distance yourself from the hostility. It's harder said than done. Distance yourself in the sense that weed out and try to figure out, what is this attorney trying to convey to you, or what is this individual trying to convey to you, and then take that point and loop it back to them and say, I want to make sure this is what you're trying to say, and then go from there. Those are the 3 key points that I've used repeatedly in situations such as that. So those are my thoughts. Deb, what do you think?
I think you're really raising a point I think we've all sort of been talking about, is that you really can't change what someone else is doing. You can only sort of account for your behavior and how you respond. You can't generalize or overgeneralize about people in this profession, but I'm mostly afraid of the lawyers who are really calm and quiet and haven't raised their voice once and haven't sent me really long, nasty, threatening letters. I'm less concerned about people raising their voices and yelling, other than I don't particularly like it. But those lawyers a lot of times are trying to account for either a lack of skill and insecurity, I think, Rebecca, that you brought up, a lack of understanding what's going on with the case, or sort of a ongoing bullying tactic or strategy. I think it's really important to be calm. I've gotten those calls. And one thing you said made me smirk, because people have said the judge is not going to be happy with you. If I was your managing attorney, or I was your superior, people have said that to me before, which I think is funny, because I own my own firm, and if there was a managing partner, I would have tried to get fired a long time ago so I can go do something else. I mean, these things. So I've had people call me and yell at me. I've had women call me. Look, women do this stuff too. Let's not kid ourselves. Women in this, I may have done some of this stuff early on. I'll deny it if you say it out loud. Oh, it's being taped. This happens. I've been screaming and yelled at by women also, but this sort of off the bat screaming and yelling, that sort of plan ahead. I always say, do you think the judge is going to be mad at me? And they say, yes, that's what I think. And I say, God, I hope this is the case that finally gets me disbarred. I hope you're right. I hope my client has lied. I hope we bomb, because man, I really would like to do something else, and I own my own firm, and it's hard to fire yourself. So if you really think, man, this is the case that's going to take me down, let me know. Or I've also said, are you asking me out on a date? And they're like, what? And I said, oh, I don't know. I just thought this was like hitting me over the head with a backpack kind of thing. They're stunned. They don't know what to do. Then they laugh. And then I'm like, so wait, what's going on? I lost you at when you started screaming at me. What's happened? Can you please say that? Can you say it a different way? Right? I don't know. Anything to sort of throw kind of a wrench into things where people are caught off guard, it sort of changes the tone. But I think you have to be, and I think Dory brought this up, you really have to be calm in yourself, and you have to develop a level of confidence that does not arise from yelling back, getting the better of someone else. People are going to yell and scream at you. Judges are going to do things you don't like. This profession is tough. You have to sort of get okay with yourself so you can respond from yourself and not what's coming at you.
Yeah, let me jump on that. I love that comment, and to that end, I think one of the things somebody gave me this pearl of wisdom 1,000,000 years ago in some job interview, and I've used it ever since, and it really applies to more than job interviews. And that is that whenever you're in a job interview and they're asking you questions, really think of yourself as interviewing them. Really, you're the interviewer, and they're begging you to come work for them. And so you want to figure out what's so great about this place, right? Tell me about the work culture or whatever. And it's the same when you have interchanges with opposing counsel. The theme we've seen in these scenarios is that the real diagnosis is these are people operating out of their limbic animal brain of insecurity. They're freaking out and they're attacking. And when you're an inexperienced or new lawyer, what's most important to you is to know stuff and to be a fighter and to fight back. And actually it's much more powerful, to Deb's point about the real opposing counsel that's scary is the calm one. And that is that rather than being get into questions. You can always default to questions, because I think Dory raised this earlier. When you ask questions, you are disarming your opponent and you're putting the burden on them, right? We're all familiar with the burden. So what makes you think X, Y, and Z? What makes you say exactly what Vahishta just said she did? Why do you think that? Tell me about this. And it also does kind of get them rambling, and they often end up kind of letting out their own rope in a way. And that can be a way to calm the situation down. And also, it's hard to be mad at somebody who's curious about your actual position, who's asking you a question about, tell me more, right? Tell me more. Yeah, really, say more about that, right? It's hard to be mad. So it can be disarming. But I really like the way everybody talked about this.
Dory, what are your thoughts?
Rebecca, incredible, because asking questions is your power. And there's a power in the questions to diffuse something. And obviously you're wanting to diffuse this person's anger. Things, even on Zoom, I would make sure I have a pair of glasses handy. So I'm going like this, and it looks like I'm taking notes. And I'm taking notes on the facts. And I would say, asking the questions, by the way, the power word is the word what, not why. Why gets people still in a phrase of defense? What causes them to go up here and use the gray matter to respond? Because you've asked, what is causing this? What is making you so angry? Not why are you so angry? So as I'm taking notes and I've heard them ramble enough, I might then rephrase and say, let me make sure I've got this right. And I've just bulleted, did I miss anything? And then I might sit back and do this. I think there's something that you're not saying. What am I missing here? What is it you're not saying? And then sometimes you've diffused the situation because you've allowed them to just flush out everything. And usually it's those emotions because something happened, the client yelled at them, whatever it is. But you've become the person who you're listening, and you're all ears on that. Deb, you always go out and throw a curveball, and those are very effective tactics to use. And I would love to see people get their phrases, even humorous or non-humorous, ready and prepared and practiced, because they are very effective in stopping everything and diffusing a situation. And then Vahishta, when you've got somebody, as you said, you're politely pointing out the facts. I might use a little bit of buttercream depending on this person because they're not getting their strokes from somewhere. And I might use something like, the buttercream is, I recognize that you've been put into this case or you're new to this case. And I'm wondering if you are aware of the fact, and then I'd go A, B, C. So what you've done is you've not painted them into a corner, but you've allowed them an escape conversation. These things begin with RE. You're rephrasing, you're reacting, except that you have the power in the reacting because you do the react for them. You're actually acting to calm down the situation, to have them change the way they're acting, if they will. And a lot of people, come on, they've learned it. This is their MO. This is the way they've learned it, and they're not going to change. But you can slow things down. And then the other one is responsibility. The response ability. So split the word in half. You have response and the ability to respond in a manner to change them. So really good scenario on that one. Yes.
Right.
I want to just bring up one last point that I think is important. I didn't really understand. It's very easy to dehumanize another person who's yelling at you. And one of the first cases I mediated, one of the lawyers was very aggressive and sort of jerky from the outset. And I didn't really know what to do with him. And then we did the mediation, and I saw his client rip him to shreds all day long. And I felt really badly for him. And by the end of the day, he was almost in tears. I sent his client out of the room. I said, go. And I looked at this lawyer and I was like, wow, I really didn't like you at the outset, in all honesty. Has this been going on the whole time? And he was tearing up. He said, this guy has been riding me like that, the way he talked to me for 3 years. And suddenly I thought, oh, someone's riding him. Somebody is treating him so poorly. And he's, like Dory just said, he's been painted into a corner for 3 years. I didn't appreciate how he sort of turned that on me, but I understood at that point that he's been getting it himself this whole time. So I think it's important to remember that even the yelling people are people and are sort of we're all in this universe, right? I don't think it's the healthiest universe for all of us.
Very true. And that gives, on a side note, despite the situation that we end up in litigating or mediating or whatever it may be, I just want to point out the fact that even with these tools, that you should do things on the side to kind of separate that kind of environment and take, instead of taking it home. So whatever it takes, taking deep breaths, doing, exercising before you go home, so that you're not taking that baggage home, despite the fact that you have these tools in your belt as to how to respond to these types of individuals. But at the end of the day, it still might be, you might still be thinking about that. So do things that will calm you down as well. And make sure that you remember that you haven't created these situations. What you're trying to do is rectify it or calm it down. And remember that your health is also important, and so is your family, so that you don't take this baggage home to your family. So do whatever it takes to calm yourselves down, despite these tools that Deb, Rebecca, and Dory and I have spoken about during this session. On a final note, we're going to leave it with our expert, because she is the expert and we want to hear from her. So Dory, any other pointers you want to give us before we end today?
Yes, a treasure trove of tools. So they've seen wonderful examples from the three of you. This is great. But I want to give them tools that they can use for the rest of their lives, both in career and, let's face it, could be a bad neighbor. It could be a situation in the family. There are a couple that I use with my clients because they're proven and they work. One of them is called a quick coherence technique. And just quickly, it was put together by the Heart Math Institute over in California. And I hope that this is going to be in the video chat box. It's heart math, MATH.org. It's a nonprofit, but it's been an excellent group that has taken a look at how do we chill you? How do we ground you so that your reaction is not one that's going to cause you to flush, get angered, lose your calm? And when they first started this, I think it's fascinating. When they first started this technique, it's called lock-in. And it's very simple, and they've got it free on their website. And I've given you the URL so that they can explore it more and practice with it. They started with the Los Gatos Police Department. What they wanted to do is to diffuse the anger of energy that your body emits when you're coming into a hostile situation. And over the years, they've been doing this with many, many volatile situations, including other policing agencies. It's very effective. And I like people doing it. It takes no time. Eventually, you'll get so good with this. V, I may have taught you this one, where while you're sitting there in person, you might throw your hand over your heart, you take a deep breath, you go, and what happens is the technique brings you to something to literally plug you back down into the ground. Another one is another favorite tool I have, and it's put together by a company in the Midwest. They're known as learningstrategies.com. And what I like about one of the tools they offer, they're called paraliminals. Think of yourself going through a 25-minute, 26-minute earbud, headphone, guided meditation. It meets a subliminal and the newer technology called Holosync. What this does is it literally is helping you get out of your head and into a position where you are able to take on anything that comes along. Whoops, there goes our timer. So those two tools in themselves, and with the Learning Strategies Paraliminal, they have a list of probably 50. One of my favorites is anxiety, taming your anxiety. Another one is peak performance. And I think just those two that you use as a tool every day, especially as you're going into something that you know could have a bully in it or known for bad behavior, that you don't want it to trigger you. And then the third thing is, when I said in the beginning, you need to know yourself, you really do. You need to know and call out what your triggers are. If your triggers are being yelled at because it reminds you of a childhood situation or being accused of something you didn't do, we have triggers and they boil down to about 8 things. And once you figure that out, you can coach yourself or use a coach to get you to diffuse what that trigger is and when somebody attempts to trigger you with it. Because you're on the one side of the bully or the bad behavior, and it's so important for you not to flash back to those triggered memories and what they caused to you. So you have the tools available to you, and not to forget the most important one is to talk to your colleagues, especially those who have been there before you, like these 3 women. They have excellent tactics. They've been there, done that, and maybe Deb could even give you a couple of her phrases so that you create your phrase. And Rebecca's going to give some of those questions so that you can create off of her those questions. There's just so many different things, but use your resources of your colleagues.
Thank you, Dory.
All right. Thank you all so much. This was fantastic. I have the word buttercream is just sitting in my brain.
I'm hungry.
Wishing I had known about buttercream when my kids were younger. But thank you. Vahishta, Deb, Rebecca, and Dory, this was just fantastic.
Good.
Hey, everybody. So my name is Teresa Hurley. I'm the executive director of the Contra Costa County Bar Association. this very thought-provoking program where our experts shared their expertise was fantastic. And you are actually going to get a chance very shortly to talk to them directly in a live Q&A after just a couple of announcements. I also want to say thank you to our women's section for coming up with the inspiration for this program. Just a few quick things. Materials and evaluation forms for this program can be downloaded from the session page. Just look for the Files tab, which is right above the chat. Your attendance certificates will be available after Thanksgiving. And if you need a little bit more information on how to access those, whether you're a member or not, check out the FAQ tab on the Spectacular website. That's also where you can go if you're having any kind of technical difficulties. So now please click the link below to join the live Q&A session with our panelists. I'll see you there.